No way! A collective gasp rippled through the packed arena as Coach Miller collapsed ringside, flat out, medics rushing in a blur of white. Liam the Lion. O'Connell stared, his world spinning, opponent forgotten. Then a hush fell, quickly replaced by incredulous snickers. An elderly woman, frail-looking in simple clothes, pushed past security, her eyes locked on Liam, a strange calm on her face. "You need me," she said, her voice surprisingly steady, cutting through the chaos like a knife. Liam just stood there, paralyzed, a million questions screaming in his head. Before we dive into this story, leave your comment with a rating from 1 to 10 and tell us which city you're watching from. May this moment bring reflection and emotion to your heart. The roar of the crowd had vanished, replaced by a deafening silence that pressed in on Liam O'Connell like a physical weight. 1 minute, he was hyped, ready to step into the octagon under the blazing lights of the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas, the energy of thousands buzzing through his veins. The next, his legendary coach, Frank Miller, was down, gone, whisked away on a stretcher, leaving a gaping, terrifying hole in Liam's corner. Liam felt like he'd been punched in the gut, his own body failing him. He watched the medics disappear, the urgency in their movements a stark reminder of how serious this was. His opponent, a cocky dude named Brandon, the Beast, Hayes, was still pacing, flexing, looking ready to tear into him. But Liam couldn't even register that. His mind was blank, save for the terrifying image of Miller's still form. Then came the old woman. Liam's eyes, still trying to process the chaos, landed on her as she moved, somehow, through the security detail. Who was this lady? She looked like she belonged in a library, not a fight night. Her gray hair was pulled back neatly, a simple cardigan over a plain shirt, and sensible shoes. There was nothing about her that screamed, "Fight game." He heard the whispers start, then the outright laughs rolling through the upper decks. "What's Grandma doing here?" someone yelled, and the mockery intensified. It was humiliating. For him, for the sport, for everyone. Security guards, big, burly guys, were trying to gently guide her away. But she just kept coming. A slow, determined march, her gaze fixed entirely on Liam. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but it carried, "You need me," she'd said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, delivered with a conviction that rattled him more than he cared to admit. He just stood there, frozen, his chest heaving, trying to breathe in the suffocating absurdity of the moment. The fight was postponed, of course. No way Liam could have stepped into that octagon, not with his mind completely shot. The next few days were a blur of hospital visits, anxious phone calls, and an endless stream of media coverage. Frank Miller was stable, thank God, but recovering from a significant health scare that would keep him out of commission for months, maybe even longer. Liam felt a knot in his stomach every time he thought about it. Frank wasn't just a coach, he was family, a mentor who had taken Liam under his wing when he was a scrappy kid from East L.A., with nothing but fire in his belly and a dream. Now, that dream felt like it was crumbling. So, what's the plan, Lion? His manager, Dave Jenkins, a man whose permanent state was on the verge of a heart attack, paced in Liam's apartment. Dave ran a hand through his thinning hair. "We got a rematch scheduled in 6 weeks. 6 weeks, Liam. We need a coach, someone seasoned. Someone who knows your style, someone who can step up to the plate." Liam just grunted, tossing a half-eaten protein bar onto the counter. "Yeah, Dave, tell me something I don't know." He'd already had a parade of potential replacements, all big names, all with impressive resumes. There was Coach Alvarez, all bravado and old-school tough love, but his methods felt dated. Then Coach Sterling, slick and analytical, but he didn't seem to grasp the raw, emotional core of Liam's fighting style. None of them felt right. None of them could fill Frank's shoes. It's not just about tactics, Dave. Frank, he gets me. He knows when I'm off, when I'm holding back. He sees things nobody else does. Dave sighed, flopping onto the couch. I hear ya, buddy. But we're running out of time. The press is already having a field day. Liam O'Connell, the lion without a roar. Seriously, they're eating this up. And then there's that incident with the old lady. Dave paused, rubbing his temples. Look, the network called. They want to know what the deal was. They want to know if you're okay, if you're mentally prepared, and, they also wanted to make sure that woman isn't, a persistent problem. Liam rolled his eyes. A persistent problem? She was just there, Dave. I don't know what her deal was. Probably just a confused fan or something. He tried to dismiss it, but the image of her calm, unwavering stare kept flashing in his mind. It was unsettling, like she did know something. The next day, she was at the gym. Liam saw her through the grimy window of the boxing ring, sitting on a bench in the corner, watching, just watching. No one paid her any mind at first. The few guys who were there, mostly sparring partners and some aspiring amateurs, were too focused on their own drills. But Liam felt her eyes on him. Every time he glanced over, she was looking, not staring aggressively, but observing with an intensity that made him feel like she was x-raying his soul. It was unnerving. During a water break, he walked over, trying to keep his voice neutral. "Can I help you, ma'am?" She looked up, her eyes clear and surprisingly sharp. "Eleanor Vance," she said, extending a hand that was surprisingly firm despite the delicate wrinkles. "And I already told you, you need me, Liam." He frowned, crossing his arms. "Look, Mrs. Vance, I appreciate the thought, but I'm fine, and this is a private gym. You really shouldn't be here." He tried to be polite, but a thread of annoyance was starting to fray. Eleanor just nodded slowly, as if expecting this. "Your jab is good, solid, but your weight transfer is off just a fraction. Pulling your shoulder a hair too wide. It telegraphs the punch, gives your opponent a split second to react. And your footwork," she continued, her voice soft but authoritative. "You're favoring your left, just barely, but enough to make your pivot predictable." She paused, her gaze unwavering. "When you hook off a feint, you drop your elbow too low, leaving your chin exposed for a counter. That's a bad habit, Liam. Old coaches miss the small things, but the small things win or lose fights." Liam blinked. He stared at her, dumbfounded. Everything she said, it was true. Small things, subtle nuances he'd been working on. Things Frank himself had been trying to fine-tune. Things only Frank or another high-level coach who'd spent hours studying his technique would know. He shifted his weight unconsciously. How did you know that?" Eleanor merely gave a faint, knowing smile. "Experience, dear. Decades of it. I told you. You need me." He shook his head, trying to clear the confusion. "Look, Ms. Vance, I can't just... This is crazy. I have a team, a manager. You can't just walk in here and say you're my coach." "No, I suppose not," she conceded. "But you're adrift, Liam. You're a ship without a captain, and the waters ahead are rough." She stood up, her small stature somehow gaining a quiet authority. "Think about it. You'll be back tomorrow, won't you?" And with that, she simply walked past him and out of the gym, leaving Liam standing there, his mind reeling. He couldn't shake her words. They echoed in his head through a restless night. He tried to tell himself it was just a fluke, a lucky guess. But the precision of her observations was undeniable. He called Dave, who immediately shot down the idea. "An old lady. Liam, are you serious? The media will have a field day. They'll say you've lost your mind." This is a professional sport, not some charity event for eccentric seniors. His sparring partners, when he tentatively brought it up, laughed him out of the room. The Grim Reaper's training partner, Lion, Mike, His usual sparring buddy snickered. Sounds like a solid plan. Despite the ridicule, something in Liam nagged at him. He found himself back in the gym the next afternoon, a full hour before anyone else usually showed up. And there she was again, sitting quietly on the same bench, watching. "You came," Eleanor said, a hint of something unreadable in her eyes. "I needed to clear my head," Liam lied, then corrected himself. "I needed to see if you were just pulling my leg." She chuckled softly, a dry, papery sound. "I don't pull legs, Liam. I train champions," he scoffed. "Champions? Look, I don't mean to be rude, but you look like you haven't seen the inside of a boxing gym since, well, ever. No offense." "None taken," she said, her expression unchanging. "Appearance can be deceiving. The eye does not always see what the mind knows." She tapped the bench beside her. "Sit. Let's talk about that jab again." Reluctantly, Liam sat. He still felt ridiculous. What was he doing? This was insane. But something about her calm demeanor, her absolute lack of ego, kept him there. She didn't try to impress him with jargon or aggressive tactics. Instead, she spoke in a low, even tone, dissecting his form with surgical precision, pointing out micro-movements he didn't even realize he was making. "Your core engagement is decent, but your follow-through lacks rotational power. It's like you're stopping short, holding something back. You want to snap that punch, like a whip, not push it." She demonstrated with a small, graceful movement of her wrist and shoulder, an almost imperceptible shift that, when he mimicked it, immediately felt more fluid, more powerful. He spent nearly an hour with her that afternoon, just listening, just trying out her subtle suggestions. It wasn't a full-blown training session, more like a master class in minute adjustments. She didn't have him hitting bags or sparring. She simply had him shadowboxing, then stopping, correcting, repeating. He started to feel a difference. His movements felt crisper, his balance more centered. He was less exhausted, too, finding efficiency in movements he'd previously muscled through. "It's about making every movement count," she explained. "No wasted energy, no wasted breath, every fiber working in harmony." When he finally left, his head was buzzing, not with confusion, but with a strange clarity. He still couldn't wrap his head around it, but he couldn't deny the feeling either. What if she really knew something? What if this unassuming, elderly woman was exactly what he needed? The thought was terrifying, exhilarating, and utterly against everything he thought he knew about the fight game. Dave was furious when Liam told him he wanted to try Eleanor out. "Liam, I'm telling you, this is career suicide. You'll be a laughingstock. We need to bring in someone credible, someone with a track record. Not some old lady who watched a couple of fights on TV." But Liam was uncharacteristically stubborn. "She knows her stuff, Dave. Trust me on this one. Just give me a week, 1 week of training with her. If it's a disaster, we'll cut her loose. No harm, no foul. But I gotta try. Something about her. It just feels right, somehow." Dave threw his hands up in exasperation, but Liam saw a flicker of reluctant curiosity in his eyes. The manager was a pragmatist. He knew Liam was desperate, and he also knew Liam was loyal to Miller. If this was the only way Liam could mentally move forward, maybe, just maybe, it was worth a shot. The gym became a different place over the next few days. The usual boisterous energy was replaced by a quiet focus. Eleanor insisted on working early in the morning before the other fighters usually arrived. She had Liam doing drills he'd never seen before, movements that looked more like an intricate dance than fight training. Footwork drills that had him floating across the mat, breathing exercises that calmed his racing heart, and shadowboxing sequences that felt less about brute force and more about precise timing and anticipation. She wouldn't let him hit the heavy bag for the first few days, just focused on form, on the snap and flow she kept talking about. "Don't chase the punch, Liam," she'd often say. Her voice always calm, even when he messed up. "Let the punch come to you. Control the space. Control the tempo. The opponent provides the opportunity. You provide the execution. He found himself listening intently, absorbing every word. Her corrections were always spot on, delivered without judgment, just quiet guidance. He felt a different kind of strength developing, not just in his muscles, but in his mind. But the outside world was relentless. News of Liam's unconventional new coach leaked, and the media circus descended. Paparazzi hounded him, snapping photos of Eleanor leaving the gym. Late-night talk show hosts made her the butt of their jokes. Guess Liam O'Connell's finally gone soft, huh? One commentator quipped on a national sports show, trading in a seasoned pro for a knitting instructor. His own teammates, the ones who hadn't abandoned him yet, started to drift away. Mike, his longtime sparring partner, gave him a strained look one morning. "Look, Liam, no disrespect, man, but this is a serious fight. Hayes is a monster. You need real training. I can't be part of some sideshow." Mike packed his bag and walked out, leaving Liam with a hollow ache in his chest. It hurt, but for some reason, it didn't shake his growing conviction. He looked at Eleanor, who just watched Mike leave, her expression unreadable. "Let them talk," she said. Finally, turning back to him, "Noise is just noise, Liam. The truth reveals itself in the ring, not in the headlines." He knew she was right. He had to trust his gut, had to trust what he was feeling, even if it defied all logic. As the days bled into weeks, the transformation in his training was undeniable. He felt faster, sharper, more balanced. His punches, when Eleanor finally let him hit the heavy bag, had a whip-like quality he hadn't possessed before. He was learning to conserve energy, to read his opponent's subtle tells, to anticipate rather than just react. He was rediscovering the art of fighting, stripped of all the bravado and theatrics. And as he trained, Eleanor started to drop subtle hints about her own past, never outright, but in veiled comments, in the way she referenced obscure techniques or the almost forgotten names of legendary fighters. It was like she was slowly peeling back layers of a history that had been buried deep, a history that was beginning to intrigue Liam more than he could have imagined. "Okay, Eleanor." "What's next?" Liam asked, wiping sweat from his brow, the sting of Mike's desertion still fresh but already fading against the quiet conviction Eleanor inspired. Her gaze, steady and unwavering, met his. "Next, Liam, we dive deeper, beyond the physical, beyond the obvious." She led him to a small, often overlooked room in the back of the gym, a dusty space usually reserved for old equipment. It had a worn mat, a few yoga blocks, and a surprising collection of ancient texts on martial arts, tucked away on a rickety shelf. This, she declared, would be their sanctuary. Here, their training truly transformed. Eleanor introduced him to practices he'd never associated with fighting. There were meditation sessions, not just to clear his mind, but to sharpen his focus, to quiet the internal noise so he could hear the faintest whispers of his own body. He learned breathing techniques that regulated his heart rate and conserved oxygen, turning explosive movements into sustainable energy bursts. "Every breath is a rhythm, Liam," she'd explain, her voice a soothing cadence. "Control your breath, control your fight, control your mind, control your destiny." He spent hours on intricate balance exercises, standing on one foot, then shifting, flowing, his body becoming a fluid, responsive instrument. She even had him studying chess, not for the game itself, but for the strategic foresight it demanded, teaching him to think 3 steps ahead, to anticipate his opponent's next move before they even considered it. "The octagon is a chessboard, Liam," she'd often say, "and every punch, every dodge, is a calculated move." Dave, Liam's manager, was still a nervous wreck, but even he couldn't ignore the tangible improvements. Liam looked different, moved different. He was leaner, yes, but also carried himself with a quiet authority that hadn't been there before. During sparring sessions, now with various hungry amateurs Dave managed to rustle up, Liam was a revelation. He wasn't just powerful, he was elusive. He wasn't just fast, he was precise. Opponents found themselves constantly off balance, caught by punches they didn't see coming, or missing targets that seemed to vanish at the last second. Dave would stand ringside, mouth agape, occasionally muttering, "I don't get it, but it works." He even started to reluctantly defend Eleanor to the network execs, albeit with a heavy dose of hedging. "Look, the kid's on fire. Whatever she's doing, it's working. He's got a focus I've never seen." The media, though, remained relentless. Brandon the Beast, Hayes, Liam's upcoming opponent, was still trash-talking, using every opportunity to mock Liam's grandma coach. His social media was a constant stream of memes and jeers, painting Liam as a desperate, washed-up fighter resorting to bizarre methods. "O'Connell's gone soft, folks," Hayes crowed in one widely circulated interview. "He's trading a seasoned pro for a knitting instructor. Guess he wants to lose gracefully." The pressure was immense, a constant hum of doubt and derision. But Liam found himself strangely unaffected. Eleanor's lessons on quieting the noise had sunk deep. "Their words are just distractions, Liam," she'd remind him, her voice a calm anchor in the storm. "They want to draw you into their chaos, but your strength lies in your calm, your focus. Let their arrogance be their downfall." As the bond between them deepened, Liam found himself more comfortable pushing Eleanor for details about her past. One rainy afternoon, after a particularly intense session where she corrected a micro-movement in his defense that even he hadn't noticed, he looked at her, truly seeing her, beyond the simple clothes and the aging features. "Eleanor," he began, his voice soft, "you talked about training champions, about being called the Weaver. But when I tried to look you up, there's nothing. It's like you never existed in that world. How is that possible? Your knowledge, it's so profound." She paused, her gaze distant, fixed on the rain-streaked window. A long silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken history. "The world," she finally said, her voice barely a whisper, "doesn't always remember what it doesn't want to see, especially in a sport that thrives on spectacle, on youth, on brute strength." She walked slowly to the shelf with the old books, tracing a finger over a faded spine. "My real story, Liam, doesn't fit the narrative they built. It doesn't sell tickets or sponsorships." She turned, her eyes meeting his, and in them, he saw a lifetime of experience, of resilience, and a deep, quiet sadness. "Before the Weaver, before I shaped others, I was a fighter myself. Not in the grand arenas you see today, not with the fanfare. Back then, women's boxing was a fringe sport, often relegated to smoky backrooms and forgotten gyms. They called me the Phantom." Liam's breath hitched. "The Phantom?" She nodded. "I was fast, elusive, always moving. I didn't have the knockout power of some of the men, but I learned to control the ring, to conserve energy, to make every movement count. I could slip punches, counter with precision, make my opponents chase shadows." She gave a faint, almost wistful smile. "They said you could barely see me. I wasn't just dodging, I was dancing." Her hands, delicate and wrinkled, mimicked a quick, fluid combination of moves, still imbued with a surprising grace and speed. "I believed the purity of the technique, the intelligence of the fight, would always triumph." "Why did you stop fighting then?" Liam asked, utterly captivated. It explained everything. Her insights, her subtle movements, her innate understanding of the fight. "An injury," she replied, her hand instinctively going to her side, where an old, faded scar was barely visible beneath her sleeve. "A reckless move in a fight that cost me my ribs, my shoulder. It ended my career as a fighter, and it broke my heart." Her voice was still quiet, but the emotion was palpable. "But I couldn't leave the sport entirely. I knew I still had something to offer. So I shifted, became the weaver, helping others find their path. I coached many promising young men, guiding them, refining their raw talent. Some went on to win titles, to achieve great things. But they never mentioned you, did they?" Liam said, a wave of anger rising in him. Eleanor just shook her head, a familiar resignation in her eyes. "Not often. Sometimes a quiet nod in a forgotten interview. But never truly crediting at the old lady. The industry wanted a different image for their champions. A strong, young male coach. My methods were too quiet, too unconventional, too feminine for the tough, brutal image they cultivated. So I faded into the background. My name was erased, my contributions overlooked. It was easier for them to pretend I didn't exist." Liam felt a profound sense of injustice. This woman, with her encyclopedic knowledge and serene wisdom, had been systematically dismissed, erased from the history she had helped shape. His respect for her, already immense, now deepened into a fierce loyalty. He wasn't just training with Eleanor Vance, the eccentric old lady. He was training with the Phantom, the Weaver, a hidden legend of the fight game, a testament to pure, unadulterated skill and wisdom. This fight, he realized, was no longer just about him. It was about proving them all wrong, about reclaiming her rightful place, about shouting her legacy from the highest platforms. Dave, for his part, slowly started to come around. He didn't get the full story of the Phantom. Eleanor kept that close to her chest, only revealing it to Liam. But he saw the results. He saw Liam's unwavering confidence, his precision in training, his calmness under pressure. And he saw the way Eleanor held herself, not with arrogance, but with an unshakable inner knowing. When the network executives called with another ultimatum about replacing Eleanor, Dave, for the first time, pushed back hard. "Look, she's staying," he declared, his voice firm. "Liam trusts her, and frankly, so do I. You want your marquee fighter to be at his best? This is his best. If you can't see that, then you're missing the whole damn story." It was a risky move, but Dave had seen enough to believe. He was putting his career on the line, too, sensing a greater narrative at play. The final week of training was a symphony of precision and focus. Eleanor pushed Liam to his limits, but never beyond them, always emphasizing efficiency over brute force. They meticulously reviewed Brandon Hayes' every fight, every tendency, every subtle tell. Liam was no longer just preparing to fight. He was preparing to dismantle, to outwit, to expose the arrogance that Eleanor believed was Hayes' greatest weakness. "He expects you to come at him with brute force, Liam?" she instructed, her voice calm as they watched Hayes' highlights one last time. "He expects you to be blinded by anger and ego. Don't give him that satisfaction. Give him the unexpected. Give him the Phantom." Liam nodded, his eyes fixed on the screen, seeing the openings, anticipating the moves. He felt ready, more than ready. He felt like a finely tuned instrument, every nerve, every muscle, every thought aligned. The transformation was complete. He had embraced Eleanor's philosophy, made it his own. The ridicule had solidified his resolve. The skepticism had only strengthened his belief. He knew the world saw an old woman and a desperate fighter, but he saw a legend and a chance for redemption. The day before the fight, the final weigh-in was a spectacle. Brandon Hayes strutted onto the stage, shirtless, flexing his formidable physique, basking in the cheers of his fans. He shot a condescending glare at Liam, then pointed mockingly at Eleanor, who stood quietly behind Liam, dressed in her usual simple attire. The crowd roared with laughter, some yelling insults at Eleanor. Liam felt a surge of protective anger, but Eleanor's hand, A light touch on his arm immediately calmed him. "Noise," she whispered, her eyes meeting his, a shared understanding passing between them. When it was Liam's turn, he walked onto the stage, not with swagger, but with a quiet, intense focus. He met Hayes's gaze, not with anger, but with an unnerving calm. He weighed in, then turned to face the crowd, Eleanor beside him. The flashbulbs popped, the cameras rolled, capturing the strange tableau, the powerful fighter, and the unassuming elderly woman who stood in his corner, defying all expectations. The media called it The Lion and the Librarian. They had no idea. The final press conference was a circus. Hayes, oozing confidence, predicted a first-round knockout. "O'Connell's a relic, and his coach belongs in a rocking chair," he sneered. Liam, when it was his turn to speak, just looked directly into the camera. "Tomorrow night," he said, his voice low and steady, "the truth will be revealed, not just about me, but about what true strength really looks like." He glanced at Eleanor, a faint knowing smile playing on his lips. "And I promise you, it's not always what you expect." He felt a deep sense of peace. The journey had been arduous, but he was no longer alone. He had found not just a coach, but a mentor, a kindred spirit, someone who saw beyond the superficial. Eleanor Vance, the Phantom, the Weaver, had guided him through his darkest hour. And now, together, they were ready to face the brightest lights. The arena would be packed, the world watching, ready to witness a fight. But Liam knew, deep in his heart, that this was much more than just a fight for a title. It was a fight for validation, for recognition, for a legacy that had been unjustly buried. It was a fight for the quiet wisdom that defied the roar of the crowd. A fight to prove that strength could come in the most unexpected, unassuming forms. The bell was waiting, just hours away, ready to sound the beginning of their shared destiny. The air in the MGM Grand Garden Arena was thick enough to chew, a palpable blend of anticipation, sweat, and cheap cologne. Liam O'Connell, the Lion, stood in the tunnel. The roar of the crowd a low, guttural vibration under his feet. It was fight night, the culmination of weeks of ridicule, doubt, and a training regimen so unorthodox it had become the talk of the entire sports world. Beside him, Eleanor Vance, small and serene in her simple tracksuit, seemed utterly unaffected by the clamor. She was his calm in the eye of the storm. "Remember what we talked about, Liam," she said, her voice cutting through the distant cheers with a quiet authority that always surprised him. "Patience. Control the space. Let him chase shadows. He wants speed. Give him precision. He wants power. Give him timing. You are the Phantom tonight." Her gaze met his, and in her deep-set eyes, he saw not just encouragement, but a profound, almost ancient understanding. It wasn't just his fight anymore. It was their fight, a chance to rewrite a forgotten history. The announcer's booming voice echoed through the arena, introducing Brandon the Beast, Hayes first. The crowd erupted, a deafening wave of cheers and flashing lights. Hayes, all muscle and swagger, practically sprinted to the octagon, soaking up the adulation. He pounded his chest, flexed for the cameras, and then, predictably, shot a contemptuous glare at Liam's tunnel. Liam just took a deep breath, Eleanor's words a mantra in his head. Noise is just noise. Then came his turn. And now, fighting out of the blue corner, Liam, the Lion O'Connell. The cheers were mixed with a chorus of boos and jeers, louder than he'd ever heard. The comments from the bleachers were harsh, cutting. "Go home, Grandpa!" someone screamed, clearly aimed at Eleanor. "Where's your real coach, Liam?" another voice mocked. He felt a flicker of the old anger, the protective instinct for Eleanor, but her hand, lightly resting on his elbow, grounded him. He kept his stride steady, his gaze fixed straight ahead, ignoring the glares and the derision. Eleanor walked beside him, her small figure a stark contrast to his imposing frame, yet radiating an undeniable strength. They looked like an unlikely pair, a sight that fed the narrative the media had spun. As they reached the octagon, Dave Jenkins, his manager, was already there, looking paler than usual. "Liam, the whole damn world is watching," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. "Just try to make it quick, okay? Don't let this drag out." He meant well, Liam knew. But Dave still hadn't fully shed his fear of Eleanor's unorthodox approach. Eleanor simply offered Dave a small, serene smile that seemed to momentarily disarm him. Inside the cage, the referee gave his final instructions. Hayes was practically vibrating with aggressive energy, bouncing on his toes, throwing quick jabs at the air. He ignored Eleanor completely, his eyes locked on Liam with a smug, predatory glint. Liam, meanwhile, took his time, feeling the canvas beneath his feet, surveying the space. He took a final swig of water, then turned to Eleanor. "Remember the rhythm, Liam," she said, her voice barely audible above the din, but utterly clear to him. "Your breath, your heart, your feet, all one. He'll come in hot. Let him." She squeezed his shoulder once, a fleeting touch of deep connection. "Now, go be the truth." The bell rang. The roar of the crowd intensified. A wave of sound crashing over the octagon. Hayes exploded forward, exactly as Eleanor predicted, a whirlwind of fists and fury. He launched a powerful high kick, followed by a rapid-fire combination of punches, aiming for a quick, brutal knockout. He wanted to finish this early, to prove all the naysayers and Eleanor wrong in spectacular fashion, but Liam wasn't there. He moved, not with explosive speed, but with an almost eerie fluidity, slipping the kick by a hair, ducking under the punches, weaving away from the onslaught. He wasn't just avoiding, he was controlling the distance, making Hayes overcommit, forcing him to chase. It wasn't the Liam O'Connell the crowd knew, the one who often met power with equal power, trading blows in a furious exchange. This was a ghost, a phantom. "Whoa!" The commentator's voice blared through the arena speakers. Hayes comes out swinging, and O'Connell is dancing. "Look at that footwork. He's just out of reach." Hayes grunted in frustration, his initial burst of energy wasted on air. He pressed forward, throwing heavier, more deliberate punches, trying to pin Liam against the cage, but Liam continued to move, his feet a blur of precise pivots and shuffles, his body swaying and dipping just enough to avoid every strike. He wasn't running, he was weaving a defensive tapestry, absorbing Hayes's energy without taking a single hit. He moved like Eleanor had taught him, conserving his own power, letting Hayes expend his. He could almost hear Eleanor's voice in his head. Make him work for every inch. By the end of the first round, Hayes was already breathing heavily, his chest heaving. Liam, however, looked remarkably fresh, his movements still crisp, his breathing steady. He hadn't landed a single significant strike, but he hadn't taken one either. As the bell rang, Hayes glared at him, a flicker of genuine annoyance in his eyes. Liam returned to his corner, a calm smile playing on his lips. Dave, who'd been on the edge of his seat, let out a nervous puff of air. "You didn't hit him once, Liam. We got to get some offense going." Eleanor, however, simply nodded, a slight curve to her mouth. "Excellent, Liam. You controlled the rhythm. He is frustrated. He expected a brawl. You gave him a lesson in patience. Now, in the second, you begin to return the favor, not with force, but with intention. Target the gaps. He's starting to telegraph that right hook. Watch his shoulder. And he's leaning into his left jab too much, opening his side. Exploit it." The second round began, and Hayes, fueled by frustration, came out even more aggressively. But this time, Liam was ready. He continued to evade, but now, with every slip and duck, he threw a quick, precise counter. A flicking jab that snapped Hayes' head back just slightly. A swift body shot that landed with a dull thud. They weren't power shots designed to knock him out, but they were landing, accumulating, chipping away at Hayes' confidence. "There it is!" the commentator shouted. "O'Connell starts to find his range. Look at that accuracy. He's not putting his full weight into it, but these are clean shots." Hayes swung wildly, trying to catch Liam. But Liam was always one step ahead, moving with a subtle grace that belied his size and strength. He was making Hayes miss, making him look clumsy. Eleanor's drills on anticipating movement, on controlling the center, were paying off. Liam felt like he was seeing the fight in slow motion, reading Hayes' intentions before they fully formed. He was making Hayes dance to his tune. The crowd, initially hostile, started to shift. There were gasps of awe mixed with the boos now. A few scattered cheers for Liam began to emerge, hesitant at first, then growing louder. They were witnessing something unexpected, something different. It wasn't the brute force they'd anticipated, but a strategic masterclass. Midway through the second round, Hayes threw a powerful, predictable right hook, his shoulder betraying the move just as Eleanor had warned. Liam slipped under it, almost casually, and instead of a powerful counter, he landed a lightning-fast, precise jab to Hayes' exposed temple, followed by a quick, sharp hook to the liver. Hayes grunted, taking a step back, visibly stunned. The crowd roared, a genuine, appreciative roar this time. Eleanor, in the corner, remained impassive, but a tiny, almost imperceptible nod of approval crossed her face. "Good," she murmured as Liam returned to the corner for the break. "His frustration is turning into anger. He will become reckless. Watch his balance. He's overextending. You are weakening his foundation." By the third round, the narrative of the fight had completely flipped. Hayes was still trying to overpower Liam, but his punches were slower, less accurate. His breathing was ragged. Liam, conversely, moved with renewed vigor, his movements becoming more confident, more aggressive, but always controlled. He landed a flurry of combinations, quick, snapping punches that found their mark with startling consistency. He wasn't trying to hurt Hayes, but to dismantle him, piece by piece, exactly as Eleanor had planned. "I can't believe what I'm seeing," the commentator exclaimed, his voice filled with genuine surprise. "Liam O'Connell, who everyone wrote off, is putting on a clinic. He's completely outclassing Brandon Hayes. This is not the fight we expected." Dave Jenkins, in Liam's corner, was practically vibrating with a mix of relief and stunned admiration. He kept glancing at Eleanor, a bewildered look on his face, as if trying to reconcile the mild-mannered woman with the tactical genius unfolding before his eyes. He didn't quite understand it, but he couldn't deny what he was seeing. Liam was winning, not just by points, but by sheer, undeniable skill. Liam unleashed a combination, a feint to the head, a swift jab, then a quick step to the side, and a powerful left hook that caught Hayes clean on the chin. Hayes stumbled, his eyes momentarily glazing over. The crowd erupted, on its feet now, a wall of sound washing over the octagon. It wasn't a knockout, but it was a clear sign of dominance, a moment where the tide undeniably turned. Eleanor, for the first time, allowed herself a small, triumphant smile, a flicker of the old Weaver in her eyes. The forgotten legend was being reborn, not through her own hands, but through the man she had molded. This was her moment of quiet vindication, unfolding in the most public of arenas. As the rounds continued, Liam's performance became a masterclass in controlled aggression. He used Hayes' momentum against him, pivoting out of the way of lunging attacks, turning Hayes' own power into an advantage for himself. He didn't just dodge, he repositioned, creating angles for his own precise counters. He made Hayes chase, then caught him with swift, clean strikes to the body and head. Hayes' face was bruised, his movements sluggish, his initial arrogance replaced by a grim determination that was slowly eroding into desperation. Liam found himself executing moves that felt instinctual, yet were meticulously crafted by Eleanor. A particular slip and roll that allowed him to pivot to Hayes's blind side, a technique Eleanor had tirelessly drilled into him, felt seamless. He remembered her whispering, "They won't see you if you are not where they expect you to be. Liam, be the phantom." He was moving, flowing, dancing around Hayes, making his opponent look heavy-footed and slow. The sixth round began, and the crowd was a frenzy of noise, a complete shift from the derision of the first round. Chants of "Liam, Liam" echoed through the arena, competing with the now fainter cheers for Hayes. The commentators were waxing lyrical about Liam's transformation, speculating wildly about what had changed. None of them, of course, mentioned Eleanor by name, but the camera occasionally panned to her, a tiny, enigmatic figure in Liam's corner, watching with the intensity of an eagle. Hayes, visibly exhausted and frustrated, lunged forward with a wild, desperate overhand right. It was a move born of pure anger, devoid of technique. Eleanor had predicted this. "He will throw with rage, Liam. Be ready for the opening." Liam, remembering her words, anticipated the move perfectly. He swayed back, the punch whistling past his ear by mere inches, then stepped in, landing a devastating left uppercut that snapped Hayes's head back. Hayes stumbled backward, clearly dazed. Liam followed up with a quick two-punch combination, a jab to the body, then a straight right to the chin that sent Hayes reeling against the cage. The referee stepped in, watching Hayes closely, his hand hovering, ready to stop the fight. Hayes, clinging to the ropes, shook his head, refusing to give up, his pride still stubbornly intact. The crowd was on its feet, screaming, a mix of shock and exhilaration. Liam pulled back, not pursuing with a relentless flurry, but holding his ground, his eyes fixed on Hayes. This wasn't about a brutal finish. It was about proving a point, about demonstrating the superiority of technique and strategy over raw power. He was executing Eleanor's vision, making Hayes suffer not through physical punishment, but through utter, undeniable tactical defeat. Eleanor, still in the corner, watched with a quiet intensity. Her gaze was not on the referee or even on Hayes. It was on Liam, a silent communication passing between them. She had taught him to not just fight, but to think in the ring, to use the octagon as a canvas for his skill. And he was painting a masterpiece. The bell for the end of the sixth round rang, saving Hayes from further punishment. He staggered back to his corner, his face a mask of defeat and exhaustion. Liam walked calmly to his own corner, feeling powerful, energized, and utterly vindicated. He took a deep breath. The rhythm Eleanor had taught him, and looked at her. Her eyes, filled with a profound pride he hadn't seen before, met his. No words were needed. The fight wasn't over, but the message was clear. The world was watching, and it was finally beginning to see. The truth, in all its quiet, unexpected glory, was unfolding before their very eyes. This was more than a fight. It was a revelation, a testament to a legacy that deserved to be remembered, not forgotten. The final rounds awaited, ready to etch this moment into history. The seventh round began with a renewed intensity that crackled through the arena. Brandon Hayes, his face a swollen mask of disbelief and exhaustion, lumbered out of his corner, desperate. His initial strategy had been completely neutralized, his arrogance replaced by a raw, unthinking need to just land something, anything, on Liam. But Liam, moving with the deceptive ease Eleanor had instilled in him, continued to be a ghost in the ring. He wasn't just evading, he was dictating. He'd feint, Hayes would react, and Liam would be gone, landing a crisp jab, a stinging body shot, always moving, always controlling the rhythm. The crowd was fully invested now, their initial skepticism morphing into awe. They were watching a masterclass in strategic fighting, a dance of precision against brute force. Liam felt a surge of exhilaration. Every pivot, every dodge, every counterpunch was a testament to Eleanor's quiet genius. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for her, for the legacy that had been unjustly buried. He could almost hear her voice in his head, calm and steady. Make him chase shadows, Liam. Make him earn every breath. Hayes threw a wild, looping left, fueled by sheer frustration. Liam slipped inside, his movement so fluid it looked effortless, and landed a quick, brutal hook to Hayes's midsection. Hayes gasped, doubling over slightly, and Liam, seizing the opening, followed with a rapid-fire combination to the head, each punch snapping with a whip-like precision. Hayes stumbled back, hitting the cage with a thud. The referee moved in again, his eyes on Hayes, clearly considering a stoppage. Hayes, through sheer force of will, straightened up, shaking his head. He wouldn't quit, not yet. But the fight was slipping away from him with every passing second. Dave Jenkins, in Liam's corner, was practically bouncing on the balls of his feet, his face a mixture of pure elation and utter bewilderment. He kept glancing at Eleanor, who remained a picture of serene focus, her eyes never leaving Liam, her small figure radiating an almost palpable energy. "Unbelievable, folks!" The lead commentator, Jim the Hammer Harrison, boomed over the speakers, his voice filled with a stunned respect. "Liam O'Connell has completely transformed. Hayes can't lay a glove on him. This is a different fighter altogether. He's not just winning, he's dominating with a style we haven't seen in decades." His co-commentator, a younger, flashier analyst named Chad the Oracle Evans, chimed in, "Yeah, but what is it, Hammer? It's not just new moves. It's like he's seeing the future, anticipating everything." Eleanor, during the brief break between rounds 7 and 8E, leaned in close to Liam, her voice a low murmur. "His legs are gone, Liam. His balance is compromised. Go to the body, then the head. He will try to hold. Do not let him. Keep moving. Keep the rhythm." She wiped a bead of sweat from his brow with a calm, gentle hand, her gaze conveying a world of instruction. "You are proving what true strength is tonight. Let them see it." As Liam stepped out for the 8th round, he felt an unwavering resolve. This was it. He would finish this, not with rage, but with the quiet, devastating efficiency Eleanor had taught him. Hayes, desperate, tried to clinch, to tie Liam up, to slow the pace. But Liam, using the footwork drills he'd once found so strange, danced away, creating space, then re-engaging with sharp, targeted attacks. He was a whirlwind of calculated movement, each strike a deliberate choice. He moved in, landed a blistering 3-punch combo to the body, then deftly pivoted out before Hayes could retaliate. Suddenly, Chad, the Oracle Evans, who had been studying the fight intensely, leaned into his microphone, a strange, almost startled look on his face. "Wait a minute, Jim. That footwork, that pivot out of the clinch, followed by the specific angle of that body shot. I've seen that before, decades ago. There was a legend, not in the mainstream, never got the credit she deserved. A ghost in the ring. They called her the Phantom. She was supposed to be a myth. They said she could read opponents like an open book." Jim Harrison, a veteran of countless fights, scoffed initially. "Phantom? Chad, are you getting nostalgic for old fight tapes? This is modern MMA, buddy. Liam O'Connell is just a disciplined fighter tonight." But Chad wasn't deterred. He was furiously tapping on his tablet, his eyes wide. "No, Jim, this isn't just disciplined, this is specific. The way O'Connell conserves energy, the almost imperceptible head movements, the way he sets up his opponents for counters by making them overcommit. It's too precise. It's her style. It has to be." He paused, his gaze fixed on Liam's corner, then slowly, with dawning realization, on Eleanor. And her coach, the old lady in his corner. There were rumors she eventually coached, too. They called her the Weaver because she could weave a fighter's disparate talents into a unified, unbreakable style, but she was erased, written out of the history books because she didn't fit the macho image the sport wanted to project. A hush fell over the commentary booth. Even Jim Harrison rendered momentarily speechless. The cameras, alerted by Chad's sudden outburst, zoomed in on Eleanor. She met the gaze of the lens with a quiet dignity, a flicker of something triumphant, yet deeply personal, in her eyes. It was a silent acknowledgement, a moment of profound vindication for a lifetime of unseen contributions. The world, through Chad Evans's improbable recognition, was finally getting a glimpse of the truth. In Liam's corner, Dave Jenkins, who had been listening intently to the commentary, suddenly froze. His eyes, which had been fixed on the octagon, snapped to Eleanor. "The Phantom, the Weaver," he mumbled, a piece of forgotten industry lore clicking into place. Dave was old enough to remember hushed whispers, vague stories of a female coach who was too good, too unconventional for the establishment. He had dismissed them as old wives' tales. But now, seeing Eleanor's unwavering calm, seeing Liam's performance, the pieces of the puzzle slammed together. A wave of shame and awe washed over him. He, like so many others, had judged her by her appearance, by her age, by everything but her undeniable brilliance. The revelation wasn't just a commentary blurb, it was a bombshell. Social media exploded. "The Phantom is real! Liam O'Connell's coach is a legend!" The crowd, picking up on the commentators' stunned whispers, started buzzing with a new kind of energy, a mixture of shock and fervent curiosity. The narrative of the fight had just expanded exponentially. It was no longer just about Liam O'Connell. It was about the forgotten history of a sport, about justice, about the quiet power of wisdom against the loud, often superficial demands of the modern world. In the octagon, Liam, unaware of the exact nature of the public revelation, felt a shift in the energy. He saw the camera on Eleanor, saw the new, almost reverent expressions on some of the faces in the crowd. He knew, instinctively, that her time in the shadows was ending. This ignited a new fire in him, not of aggression, but of purposeful resolve. He was no longer just fighting for a win. He was fighting to carve her name back into the history books. Hayes, sensing the shift, but too exhausted to understand its implications, lunged again, a desperate, final effort. Liam, cool and precise, sidestepped, letting Hayes's momentum carry him past. As Hayes stumbled, off balance and exposed, Liam unleashed the final definitive combination, a blindingly fast jab, followed by a powerful, perfectly timed right cross that landed flush on Hayes's jaw. The sound was sickeningly clean, a crack that echoed through the stunned arena. Hayes's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed to the canvas, unconscious before he even hit the mat. The referee didn't hesitate. He waved off the fight, signaling the knockout. Silence. A beat of stunned silence enveloped the MGM Grand Garden Arena, thick and heavy, before it shattered into an explosive, ear-splitting roar. The crowd erupted, not just with cheers for Liam, but with a collective gasp of disbelief, then a wave of pure, unadulterated awe. Liam O'Connell, the Lion, had not just won. He had delivered a masterpiece, a tactical clinic that had dismantled a much-hyped opponent with shocking efficiency. Liam stood over Hayes's prone form for a moment, then turned, his gaze immediately finding Eleanor in his corner. She was walking towards him, a rare, soft smile gracing her lips, her eyes shining with unshed tears of triumph. He met her halfway, embracing her gently, lifting her off her feet in a moment of pure, unadulterated joy and gratitude. The crowd roared even louder, recognizing the true heart of the victory. The cameras flashed, capturing the image that would define this fight. The powerful fighter, holding the small, elderly woman who had been his guiding light, his secret weapon, his phantom. Dave Jenkins, tears streaming down his face, rushed over, practically tackling Liam in a bear hug. "You did it, champ! You did it! I knew it! I always knew you had it!" He pulled back, his eyes still wide with wonder as he looked at Eleanor. "Miss Vance, Eleanor, I owe you an apology." "A huge apology. And the world owes you so much more." Eleanor simply nodded, her smile serene. "The truth always finds a way, Dave. Sometimes it just needs a little push." In the post-fight interview, Liam stood beside Eleanor, his arm gently around her shoulder. Jim Harrison, the seasoned commentator, now humbled and full of respect, conducted the interview. "Liam, an incredible performance tonight. You silenced all the doubters, you proved everyone wrong. What changed? What was the secret?" Liam looked at Eleanor, his eyes full of love and admiration. "The secret," he said, his voice strong and clear, "was never a secret to those who truly wanted to see. It was here all along." He gestured to Eleanor. "This isn't just my coach, Jim. This is Eleanor Vance. They used to call her the Phantom in the ring, for her elusive, brilliant fighting style. And later, she became the Weaver, a legendary coach who shaped champions, but was unfairly forgotten by a sport that prioritized flash over substance." He paused, letting his words sink in, the weight of history and injustice heavy in the air. "Tonight, she wasn't just in my corner. She was fighting alongside me. This victory isn't just mine, it's hers. It's for every brilliant mind, every wise soul, who has been dismissed because they didn't fit a narrow, prejudiced mold." Liam turned to Eleanor, squeezing her hand. "Eleanor, thank you. You didn't just teach me how to fight. You taught me how to truly see, how to truly be strong." Eleanor, her voice soft but resonating with an unshakable conviction, addressed the world. Strength isn't always loud or young or outwardly powerful. Sometimes, true strength is quiet. It's in the wisdom accumulated over years, in the patience to refine, in the courage to challenge expectations. It's in the unseen, the overlooked, the underestimated. The story of Liam O'Connell's unlikely triumph and the incredible revelation of Eleanor Vance's forgotten legacy instantly became headline news worldwide. Her name, the Phantom, the Weaver, was finally spoken with the reverence it deserved, her contributions acknowledged, her wisdom celebrated. Gyms across the country started seeking out older, experienced coaches, reconsidering their preconceptions. The fight game, for one glorious moment, had been forced to look beyond the surface, beyond the glitz and the youth, and recognize the profound depth of true expertise. Eleanor Vance, the woman who had once been invisible, now stood proudly in the brightest of spotlights, her legacy not just restored, but finally shining brighter than ever before. What an incredible journey, right? If you were as moved by Eleanor and Liam's story as we were, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button, share this with your friends, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming dramas. And hey, tell us in the comments what Eleanor's story taught you about strength and wisdom. We love hearing from you.